The night hunger followed her home like a shadow, and the weight of an empty wallet felt heavier than the winter coat on her shoulders. As the diner lights dimmed behind her and the cold Ohio wind cut through the street, a single choice waited in her trembling hands, one that would quietly decide the shape of her future. What happened next would prove that the smallest sacrifice can shake the life of a stranger in ways no one expects. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and quiet miracles, take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who needs hope today, leave a comment, and subscribe to the channel so more stories like this can reach the world. Grace Holloway had learned early that survival was not loud. It happened in the background, between double shifts and unpaid bills, between worn shoes and skipped meals. At 26, she worked as a waitress in a small roadside diner outside Cleveland, Ohio, balancing plates and exhaustion with the same tired smile. Her savings were folded into a thin envelope hidden beneath her mattress, money she had scraped together for months to finally move out of her cramped apartment. Each dollar represented another night she said no to herself, another meal she delayed, another dream postponed. That evening, the diner was almost empty when she noticed the old couple sitting near the window. Walter and Margaret Bennett looked out of place, dressed neatly but worn by time. Their hands shook as they studied the menu, fingers lingering too long on prices they could not afford. Grace recognized that look instantly. It was the look of people calculating hunger against pride. When she brought their water, she saw the way Margaret quietly shook her head at Walter, and how he folded the menu with an apologetic sigh. Grace went back to the counter, her chest tight. She knew the diner owner would not allow free meals. She also knew her envelope at home held just enough to cover her overdue electric bill and maybe groceries for the week. Still, something in her refused to sit still. When the couple finally ordered one bowl of soup to share, Grace made her decision without ceremony. After her shift, she walked 3 blocks to the grocery store, counting each step as if it mattered. She bought bread, fruit, canned soup, and a small roasted chicken, placing the last of her savings on the counter with hands that barely steadied. She returned to the diner parking lot where Walter and Margaret were slowly making their way to a bus stop. Grace caught up to them and pressed the grocery bag into Walter's hands, her face burning with embarrassment and resolve. She did not wait for thanks. She simply turned and walked away, heart racing, unsure if she had done something brave or foolish. That night, she ate crackers and drank tap water, staring at the ceiling as doubt crept in. Kindness, she wondered, did not pay rent. Morning came too fast. The knock on her apartment door felt like a mistake, sharp and insistent. Grace froze, panic rising. She was already late for her shift, her power bill unpaid. When she opened the door, she expected a landlord or a notice. Instead, a man in a tailored coat stood there, flanked by a quiet driver. He introduced himself as Thomas Caldwell, a businessman from New York who had traveled overnight to find her. Grace's knees nearly buckled as confusion set and Thomas explained that Walter Bennett was his wife's grandfather. The Bennetts had been living quietly on a fixed income after medical bills swallowed their retirement. They rarely asked for help, choosing dignity over comfort. The groceries Grace had given them were the first act of unexpected kindness they had received in years. Margaret had cried all night, insisting Thomas had to know what Grace had done. Thomas spoke gently, describing how his family had built a fortune in logistics and real estate, but had somehow missed the suffering of their own elders. Grace listened in silence, her shame mixing with disbelief. She had not meant to be seen. She had only meant to help. Thomas asked to come in, noticing the bare apartment, the peeling paint, the folded uniforms drying over a chair. He did not offer pity. Instead, he offered gratitude. He explained that generosity without expectation was rare, and he wanted to repay it not as charity, but as opportunity. Grace felt tears sting her eyes as he handed her a folder. Inside was an offer for a fully funded hospitality training program in Chicago, housing included, along with a check that would erase her immediate debts. Grace tried to refuse, her voice failing her, but Thomas stopped her with a simple truth. He said that when someone gives without counting the cost, the world bends to restore balance. Accepting help, he told her, was not weakness, it was trust. In the weeks that followed, Grace's life shifted in quiet, steady ways. Her power stayed on, Her fridge stayed full. She visited Walter and Margaret every Sunday, bringing coffee and listening to their stories of a world that moved slower but loved deeper. They became family, bound not by blood but by a night of shared humanity. Grace completed her training with determination, learning management, finance, and leadership. She returned to Ohio months later, not as a waitress scraping by, but as the manager of a renovated diner funded by Thomas Caldwell with one condition. Grace had full authority to hire people struggling like she once had. Single parents, veterans, seniors who needed purpose more than pity. On opening day, the diner filled with laughter and light. Walter and Margaret sat by the window again, this time with full plates and no fear of the price. Grace watched from the counter, her eyes shining, understanding finally that her sacrifice had never been about money. It had been about seeing people, truly seeing them when the world looked away. If this story has touched your heart, if it reminded you that kindness still matters in a tired world, please take a moment to like this video, share it, and let us know you felt something too. Your engagement helps stories like Grace's reach someone who may be standing at their own crossroads tonight. Before this story ends, we have one special request. Comment below with the word kindness if you believe small acts can change lives, and tell us if you have ever experienced or witnessed a moment like this. Grace never became famous. She never asked for recognition. But every night, as she locked up the diner and stepped into the quiet American street, she carried a peace she had never known before. She understood now that miracles do not always arrive with thunder. Sometimes, they knock softly, dressed in ordinary moments, waiting for someone brave enough to open the door.